My head is spinning. There is so much going on. There is so much changing. The pace at which things are happening right now is just, I almost can't, I definitely can't quantify it. If your team is moving fast, but nothing feels like it's quite landing, and you're wasting time shipping features that aren't actually sticking, you better get damn good and damn clear on what that struggle is.
Welcome to the Forget the Funnel podcast, where we help SaaS and recurring revenue businesses stop guessing and start making more customer-led and data-backed decisions about how to grow. We're a product marketing and growth consultancy that helps teams learn from their best customers, map and measure their experiences to unlock your most effective levers for growth. If you're ready to evolve past best practices and other people's playbooks, because you know that what got you here won't get you there, then this show is for you. With that, let's dive into the episode.
Hey everyone. So today we're going to be talking about first principles. And first principles is not a new topic. It is wildly important right now, though. I am feeling much the same as I'm sure many of you working in tech are right now. My head is spinning. There is so much going on. There is so much changing. The pace at which things are happening right now is just, I almost can't, I definitely can't quantify it. I talk to a lot of teams right now, and some at AI companies, some not AI companies, all tech. And there's just a feeling of either moving too quickly or moving too slowly. The majority of the time, even the teams that are moving too quickly feel as though they're moving too slowly. And I thought it was a really important time to go back to first principles and sort of revisit, even for me, these core principles that at the end of the day help us anchor the decisions that we're making and help us make sense of what it is that we do every day. And I know for me, it is a really helpful exercise. And I do this on the regular, except that right now it's just so much more important right now. So I'm going to just make the assumption that you all might be feeling something like I am, which is that things are moving at just a head spinning pace. And if we can anchor ourselves in first principles like these, not only will we be able to make better decisions, but we'll be able to enable our teams to make better decisions too. So let's get into this. Couple of situations that brought this topic to the forefront for me. If your team is moving fast, but nothing feels like it's quite landing, and you're wasting time shipping features that aren't actually sticking. And this isn't a new problem. This is certainly something that I've heard from teams for a very long time. But I will say that the velocity at which teams are like doing product development right now, this is just exacerbated. Like, yes, it's easy to course correct, but there are so many downstream implications for moving so fast that you're, I don't want to say breaking things, but like moving fast to the point where you're developing features and products that you're wasting time and you're confusing things for your customers, for your team, for yourself. So a few hours spent on aligning around first principles can save weeks of wasted work. And I want to say it could even save you years. I know I've worked with teams over the years where they were solving for one customer for literally years. And it wasn't until they slowed down and took a step back that they were actually able to realize that they'd been focused on the wrong customers all along. This has happened a number of times. I've told these stories before. And so this is certainly not new. But where my concern sits in here is that like this is going to start to happen more and more and more. No, it might not take you years to realize, but at the pace at which a lot of these product teams have to operate right now, 2 weeks is an eternity. Next thing that comes to mind for me is those teams that are stuck in analysis paralysis and potentially drowning in data. Now, these are teams typically that have been around for a little bit longer, and they're trying to wade their way through a lot of what's going on right now. And they're trying to just make good decisions about how to prosper in this environment. And first principles really helps those. If this sounds like you, it really helps you like cut through the noise and just make better decisions. But cutting through the noise is really the piece that I want to sort of lean into there. We did a previous episode around teams that are like, data rich and insights poor. If that sounds like that might be you, I would really encourage you to check out that episode. Teams that have been around for a couple of years that aren't AI first companies, they've got this very different thing that they're contending with right now. And if this feels like you, if you feel like maybe you're not drowning in data, because I know no team, well, that's not true. I was going to say no team has ever come to us and said they're drowning in data. We actually have had teams come to us and say that we have way too much data and it's like clouding our judgment. But even if you're not in the situation where you feel like you're drowning in data, you might be looking to your data for answers when you actually need to take a step back and remind yourself what the F it is you're doing and help your team make just more decisive decisions and more confident decisions. Another thing that might be going on right now is that you think you need to reposition or that you need new messaging. And that might be true. The mistake that I just don't want you to make is assuming that positioning and messaging are a marketing exercise. Because if your product team, if your sales team, your customer success team, if your go to market and product team are not aligned on who your product is for and why it matters, you're going to end up with a very broken and sort of Frankenstein customer experience. And that can happen whether or not your SaaS has been around for years. And that can happen if you are building at this velocity that I know that a lot of AI teams are right now. And if your teams are confused, your customers are certainly going to be confused and you're going to start to lose revenue, maybe even more than you currently are. So, again, if you're thinking about updating your positioning and changing your positioning and messaging, I'm going to talk a little bit about basically, you're going to see why positioning and messaging isn't a marketing exercise. I really don't want you to make that mistake. So, this episode is really, I'm going to be speaking mostly to founders of AI products and SaaS products. They're practitioners who, the practitioners on those teams in product and growth roles, go to market roles, and then also teams struggling with speed of execution. So, product teams and founders tend to live in the future as they should. And right now, that future is changing on the daily. And that has implications and can stress out the leadership team and certainly a founder, but the practitioners as well, heads of product, heads of growth, heads of marketing, heads of sales and customer success. Those teams as well can really, really struggle to execute when things are changing as quickly as they are. So, this is who I'm talking to today. I want to make sure that that is clear. So, for those of you who are like first principles, I know first principles. I don't have time for first principles. Like our hair is on fire over here and I don't have time for this. I have a couple of things that I want to say to you before I get into the meat of the episode. And so what I want to say is that I want you to be able to stop wasting time on things that don't actually move the needle. That it's my goal for you in this episode. I would also like you to be able to quickly assess whether or not your messaging or your roadmap or your customer experience is aligned to actual demand in the market. I cannot emphasize this one enough. Why most teams are optimizing in silos and ending up with a broken customer experience and how to fix it. I want you to be able to walk away with clarity around that. And then also I want you to walk away with a framework or at least clarity on on choosing a framework to make better decisions no matter how quickly things are changing. This episode is not about AI today. I'm not going to give you the date because I want this to sort of be like the antidote to how quickly things are moving. This is the reminder that I think, or these are the reminders that I think teams really need right now. So even though you might be a skeptic and you might be like, I know first principles, I got it. I don't need to rehash the old. All I can focus and all I have time for right now is what's happening and what's new. I want to make this sort of promise to you that this is my goal. This is what I'm focused on. And if this sounds like something that you need and that would be valuable for you, then that's why I'm doing this. Other reason that I'm doing this, there are two companies that I'm working with right now that have prompted me to want to record this episode. And they are in two very different situations. And so I'm going to tell you about that. And hopefully that helps create a little bit of a context. And maybe you're going to see yourself in these two stories. Okay, so I'm working with an AI company who, as far as AI companies go, relatively mature, been around for a couple of years, tens of thousands of customers. Growth has started to slow slightly, but momentum is like high, like really, really high. This company is on fire. Like they are building really, really quickly. The product team is off to the races. They are super excited and gung ho, and things are changing so bloody fast. I was gonna say for a second, weekly, a new way of like building product like comes across product teams' desks, but actually it's more like daily right now. And because of that, more and more like the velocity is just a lot higher, but also more and more of members of the team have like ideas and things they want to try. And it's amazing and it's so exciting. And it's like the lid has been blown off of what is possible. And what that means for this product team is that they need to be really focused on obviously building the right things so that they're not wasting time because they have no time to waste, but also their go to market has to keep up with this. And that is a really challenging thing to manage, right? When your product literally changes, like your value proposition literally changes from 1 week to the next, or like potentially changes from 1 week to the next, that has massive implications for your go to market, but also like your team and the people who are responsible for going to market with this product. Now, there's this other situation, this other story that I have of a company that I'm working with that have been around for a long time. They've been around for just over a decade and they're shifting target markets and they're doing the right thing. It's definitely the right time to shift into this new market. But this team, because the team members, many of them have such like long histories with this company. They have a ton of historical context. They've got a ton of data that they've relied on in the past over the years to make decisions, that this is new territory for them. And it is feeling a little bit like there's a little bit of analysis paralysis in terms of like there's a lot of different directions they can go in. And the team is starved for like what is the next big thing we should do when there's actually a lot of short-term opportunity for them on the table, but there's just so many directions they could go in. So the first principle that I want to get into and talk about is that marketing does not create demand. And marketing does not create demand is wildly important right now because of the massive appetite to deliver product right now. There is just a glut of products coming onto the market. And the thing that I want to remind those teams and those founders of is that your product existing does not mean that there is a demand. And on top of that, you cannot just like add marketing on top of that to create demand. Marketing does not create demand. The demand exists where there is a struggle. And many of us know this, of course. If we have any amount of years of experience working in tech and in product and in marketing, we all inherently know that demand exists where there is a struggle. But it is really, really easy to forget this when you are like stoked about the thing that you're about to bring to market. And this is where I get a little bit nervous for teams when they're kind of like, we're going back a little bit to like building for the sake of building. And I think this first principle is the anchor that many, many teams need to remember that like you are not in the category creation space. I mean, you might be in the category creation space, but you're not in the problem creation space, right? There is a problem, and it is our job to find that problem and direct it and like find that demand and direct it appropriately. And there's no amount of marketing that is going to create a need or demand for your product. And so you better get damn good and damn clear on what that struggle is that creates that demand for your product. First principle number two, people buy progress, not products. Now, again, this is not novel. I mean, no first principle is novel, I suppose. I was listening to a podcast episode recently with Bob Mesta where he was talking about the previous first principle around creating demand. Marketing does not create demand. And of course, if we look to this too, right? Like people buy progress, not products. Our customers hire our product to do a job for them. And we talk a lot about jobs to be done. Here, we love it as a framework. Bob Mesta, one of the original co-architects of the jobs to be done framework and approach, he wrote the foreword for our book, Forget the Funnel, because our customer-led growth framework builds upon the jobs to be done framework. We believe so heavily in this approach, and I know a lot of product teams do as well. And that is why this is one of the first principles today. We cannot forget this, right? It is not about our shiny features. We can have the whole like benefits versus features debate. We have a previous episode where we recorded about, benefits versus features. That's not actually what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about here is that like right now there's just a massive tendency to roll out features for feature's sake, and we cannot forget to focus on the transformation that those features allow, not the features themselves. Again, this is all just like a big reminder. Like, take each one of these like I'm slapping you in the face every time you say something that goes against these first principles. I cannot stress this enough. The best kind of marketing, best kind of messaging, the best kind of, product experience and customer experience is the one that leads people to say, that is me. They see me. They understand me and I feel seen and I feel understood. And this represents where I want to go. That is the only thing that matters. And so, as amazing as the new features might be that you are building, the only thing your customers give a shit about is the progress that they are trying to make. That's it. I'm not saying that brand is not important, it is important. But as far as building a messaging strategy and a product experience for them and the product that you develop, it has to be about the progress that your customers are trying to make in an organized way, which actually brings me to first principle number 3. Context is everything. I talk a lot about context, and context is everything. I mean, it's a silly name for a first principle, I suppose. But let me get into what I mean by this. So there's a lot of ways that I could talk about context, but the way that I want to sort of lean into here is that the other thing to remember, other than the fact that like you are not going to create demand, the struggles and problems, and the market creates the demand, and that your customers, people are not trying to buy a product. They want to make progress. They don't care about your product. The next thing that you need to remember is that customers need different things at different times. I'll say like in their lives, obviously, because they're human beings, but also in their relationship with you. And when I say their relationship with you, I mean from being in the world, not even experiencing the problem that you solve to, and this is where it becomes actually important for us, right? To the context, the life that they are experiencing as they're experiencing the problem for the first time, right? Like when are they like, oh, this sucks? And what are they doing in that moment? What is the experience that they're having in that moment? Is it with a tool? Is it in a conversation? Is it in their job? Is it a life decision? Like what is going on in that specific context where they first experienced the problem that you are ultimately going to help them solve? That is one very specific context and only one of like potentially dozens that your customer will be in their relationship with you. Imagine all the others that come, right? What matters when they're in the problem space and potentially even in solution seeking mode is very different from what matters to them when they land on your website and discover that you exist, when they decide to try your product for the first time and get into that onboarding experience, from when they become a customer and reach value realization, from when they evolve past the problem that you help them solve and need something else now, or it's renewal time, or you introduce something else to them to expand their product usage. every single one of those points is completely different from the other. And I see way too many teams confuse and conflate all those different contexts together. And this is why it is so important to actually deconstruct your customer's experience and identify those like key milestones. We talk about these like success milestones, these moments of value that your customer experiences all along their relationship with you. Again, from being out in the world experiencing the problem that you are going to help them solve, to evaluating your solution, to talking to their colleagues, to getting into the product and trying it for the first time, to inviting their team members, to asking their boss, to expanding, like all of those situations. It is our job to deconstruct their customer experience in a way that allows us to understand and go really deep on each of them so that we can understand what they are thinking, what they're feeling, and what they're doing so that we can create an amazing experience for them all along the way. It is our job to adapt to them, not their job to adapt to us. And that is something that if you were honest, like, and you were honestly did, if you did the secret shopper thing in your customer experience and across your marketing and your website and you went into your product, if you actually pretended to be for your customer for a second, I wager you are going to see discrepancies in the experience that you're providing. First principle number 4, focus on actionable metrics, actionable and meaningful. I don't wanna harp on this too much, but what I will say is that this is not a marketing thing. It's not unique to marketing. I know that vanity metrics are often referred to as, like, a marketing thing, but this product has just as many vanity metrics as marketing teams do. So, I mean, I'll give you an example. On the product side, you might have a habit of tracking weekly active users or monthly active users or credit card entered. There is a chance, potentially even a high likelihood, that those metrics, just as examples, might be vanity metrics. They might have absolutely nothing to do with your customer reaching or experiencing value. We did a two-part podcast on how to develop and think about these like KPIs, like leading indicators of success, and how to identify them and define them and tie them back to product usage. And so I won't go on too much, but if you're interested in that, I would check out those 2 episodes because we go pretty deep on like why, what is this thing? But the thing that I want you to sort of remember here is that like I'm seeing just a lot of teams just rely on metrics that don't actually matter, and especially now, right? Like the lid has been blown off of all the things that we could possibly do. And I think that that is amazing. I think that's so, so, so exciting. Marketing teams are experimenting with new things, product teams are experimenting with new things. And I think that that's incredible. But the North Star, so to speak, of all of those things that they're trying needs to be rooted in like our customers actually getting to a moment of value. And that's actually really exciting, right? Like that puts teams in a position of doing like really incredible things when they don't need to just be laser focused on weekly active users or visitors to the blog or, engagement on social posts. But I guess what I'm trying to get at here is that a lot of teams are just like they're at too low of a level in terms of what they're prioritizing. They're thinking too like at the micro level instead of at the macro level. And so when we do customer experience mapping for teams, what we're doing is we're identifying those milestones in the customer experience where customers take these like leaps of faith. And for each of those milestones, we're identifying one quote unquote like North Star sort of KPI for each of those milestones. Because again, context is everything. And I call it a North Star. I call them North Star metrics, and which I recognize is like kind of an oxymoron because by very virtue of the name, there should only be one. But I genuinely believe that there is a North Star metric for each of those milestones. Like, does your company overall have a North Star? Should you, I'm sorry, have a North Star metric for like your product? 100%. I'm not anti North Star metrics at all, at all. That's what I would refer to as like value realization. Like your customer has reached value realization. That should be your North Star. Like the tippy top. But then there's other leading indicators of success that should roll into that. And they're sort of the tie that binds between maybe your North Star metric or MRR growth, these like lagging indicators of success versus the tactical metrics that your team is likely swimming in right now as they are experimenting with new things. And at the end of the day, if you're not moving the needle on, your customer's ability to understand if the value that you provide, matches the hellscape that they're in on your website, for example, then like, what are you doing? If your product experience isn't helping your customer get to a really meaningful moment of first value in your product that convinces them to keep going on their way to reaching full value realization, and you're focused on them entering a credit card, no, that that might have nothing, in fact, I'm almost positive, has nothing to do with them experiencing value. And so I'm just seeing a lot of teams getting bogged down in like, again, it kind of goes back to that like data rich insights poor problem, where a lot of teams are missing the forest for the trees. And by the way, like I empathize because there is so much going on, and there's so much experimentation that is happening inside of teams right now, that it's really easy to happen. And I'm not saying that these smaller measures of success are not important, but at the end of the day, nothing is more important than those high level KPIs that tell us that we have done our job helping our customers get from one milestone to the next. Everything else is noise unless it is driving towards that. Unless those underlying metrics are driving towards those higher led KPIs, it's noise. Okay, that's my fourth first principle. So again, as a reminder, right? So when your head is spinning, either because you're moving too quickly or you're moving too slowly or things are feeling chaotic, right? The first one, marketing does not create demand. It's up to us to identify that struggling moment and meet that moment and harness that demand and meet them where they are. People also do not buy products, they buy progress. It is not about your features. Nobody cares about your product. They care about the progress that you are gonna help them make. That is critically important to remember. Context is also everything. So you can have all the amazing ideas in the book, but I'm seeing a lot of teams throw the kitchen sink at their customers across the customer experience. They are sending way too many messages all at the same time when people are not ready for it, right? This is not unique to right now. This is something that we've helped teams with for years and years, throwing the kitchen sink at their customers, at onboarding as a good example. This has been a problem for a very long time, but that is one of the first principles that we all need to remember when we are building campaigns, when we're building programs, when we're building programmatic comms or even AI, personalized experiences. Context is everything, and the team needs to operationalize or deconstruct the customer's experience in a way that makes decision making much easier, and also ideation so much more exciting, honestly, and a lot more focused, which is first principle number 4, focusing on meaningful, actionable metrics is so, so important right now. It is so easy to get lost in the data right now. It is so easy to get lost in the weeds of execution and lose sight of what actually matters to your customers and measuring our ability to help them reach those moments of success. Okay. Now, for applying these first principles, obviously, I cannot go on and on about these first principles and not talk about like the reminder here, like audit where your team is stuck. Now, this might be easy or this might be hard. It could be easy if you're like, okay, I'm going to put these first principles in my mind's eye, and I'm going to really think these things through. Like after you've listened to me like rattle off about these things, you might be like, I know where our biggest deficit is. I know where the team is stuck. It might be one or two sort of key areas that the team is stuck on. It might be parts of the customer experience that are really off, or it might be that decision making is poor inside of some of the teams potentially, or you might not know. You might have gone through all of this and still feel unsure what the problem is. And if that is you, the problem is your customers. And I don't mean like your customers are the problem. I mean your understanding and your ability to have clarity around your customers and your team's clarity around your customers and in delivering the experience your customers need when they need it is the problem. Like you don't have a revenue problem, you have a customer problem, right? That's the I don't want to say like it's an old adage, but like that is so, so true. Maybe that should have been a first principle. You have to understand your customers, and if you sort of take the macro look at what's going on inside your team right now, and you're not sure what the problem is, you need a realignment around who your customers are. I cannot tell you how many teams that we have worked with over the years that have operated for years without really truly understanding who it is that they serve, and they spread themselves too thin and they survived despite it. And my worry now is that those teams won't survive anymore. Like your days are numbered if you don't deeply understand who you serve and your team doesn't have absolute clarity and that information is not like democratized across your team. I always talk about like democratizing that information and I talk about like removing all ambiguity around what actually matters to your best customers. That should be your center of gravity. And if you're not sure what is wrong or you're experiencing slowed or inconsistent growth, that's your problem. Next thing that I will say is identify if speed or indecision is the problem. Again, this is a situation where like this might be easy or it might be difficult for you to figure this out because if you're not like on the ground with your team in the execution and not like witness to the execution, it might be indecision, right? Like if you're not actually seeing a lot of execution, it's probably going to be indecision, but you might also see it's spaghetti at the wall. And both of those situations are obviously terrible. And understanding that is going to be really, really important. But they're both a problem. In either case, recentering around the context in which they're executing on their ideas or the customer context that they need could really speed up the teams that are locked in indecision and could also help to reorient the teams that might be moving a little bit too quickly and like wasting time throwing spaghetti at the wall. Aligning product and go to market strategy in real demand. This one is very, very pertinent right now. Again, going back to just the velocity at which I'm like teams are executing at right now, anchoring your team back around the actual demand that exists for your thing is really, really important. And I say like anchoring, aligning, repeating. You cannot like there's no world where your team feels like they know too much about your customer or they know they have too much context about your customer for what it is that they're designing or building or solving. And so reorienting around like actual real demand, and we're not there's no chasing ghosts here. Like real demand in the market has to exist and it probably does exist. You just need to find it and reorient your team around it over and over and over and over again. This is an ongoing process. You always need to be tying back to actual demand. Okay. And now how product marketing can help. And I'm putting an asterisk on product marketing because at the end of the day, product marketing actually does a lot of things. I'm going to talk about some aspects of what product marketing is responsible for that can really, really help here. We obviously developed a framework called customer led growth that is basically designed to solve a lot of this stuff, not all of it, but a lot of this stuff. But mostly what I want to focus on here is if you have a product marketing team or a product marketer, or at the very least, hopefully you have some sort of product marketing function inside of your team, this is how I firmly believe that product marketing is the function that will really, really, that is just going to be more and more and more important as all of these markets become more and more and more commoditized and the not only the product development cycle continues to stay at this pace, but also the marketing that is being produced and thrown into the market as well. I think product marketing needs to start becoming the center of gravity for a lot of teams. And that is because product marketing can, if you let it, serve as the alignment piece, right? Like acts as a shared resource for alignment for the team. Now, I'm not saying that customer success teams should know a lot about your customers. Of course they should. But product marketing by design should be the one that is responsible for learning as much as possible about what is going on inside your customers' heads, what is going on in the market, what's going on in the competitive space, and how your solution, your product, your customer experience ties back to it. And so product marketing can serve as one of the most incredible alignment tools at your disposal. I'm going to wager if you have a product marketing team that you're underutilizing them in this way. And I say that because I don't know that I've ever seen a product marketing team actually genuinely be utilized in all the ways that it should be. So, product marketing can also create frameworks to keep teams rooted in these first principles and other first principles, but, for sake of argument, again, serving as that, like, anchor for good decision making, for that source of truth on, like, decision making. I am not trying to take away, obviously, from, like, marketing leadership or product leadership, or customer success leadership or sales leadership. I'm not detracting from them at all. Those leaders need help. They have so much to do, so much more to do than they can, that product marketing should be at the service of them. Like, product marketing should be at the center of the Venn diagram. And I don't think that there's much that's more important than that right now. Again, with everything that's going on in the market, use product marketing to your advantage. The other thing too is that product marketing can ensure that execution stays focused on real customer needs, right? We're not chasing ghosts here. We cannot, hypothesize about what our customers might care about or what they must care about. We can't assume anything. Things change so quickly. By the time we have an idea about one thing that might resonate with our customers, it's probably changed. And so we have to stop guessing, stop assuming that we know better than our customers, and actually, again, take the time to take one step back in order to take two forward. I want to say more than two, because rooting execution back in like actual customer understanding is kind of the only thing that matters right now. And product marketing is basically the best at enabling and educating the team and keeping the team, the rest of the org, in the loop on what is happening that matters, and how to tie it back, and like just how to make everything sort of like work. Again, I'm not saying that like your head of product can't do this. I'm not saying that your head of marketing can't do this or any of the other teams. What I'm saying is that those people, they have to manage their teams. They have to make sure that their teams are, actually doing this work and doing their best work and making amazing decisions and enabling them to make amazing decisions and try new things and all that stuff. Product marketing has this like unfair advantage of being at the center of that Venn diagram and basically serve as like the education to the rest of the company. And I see way, way, way too many teams just underutilize product marketing in this way. Okay. Lastly, what I want you to remember is that if your team is struggling, go back to first principles. They are your anchor. When in doubt, go back to those first principles. When in doubt, go back to what actually matters to the customers who love you and who have made trade-offs to put you in their lives and that would never let you go. That is your center of gravity, and use first principles as your sort of reminder to get back to that anytime you have an opportunity to, particularly as a team. Better decisions come from understanding demand, context, and progress, not chasing tactics. I'm not sure much else needs to be said about this. I feel like, as soon as you look at these first principles, I think you're going to pull your head out of the clouds a little bit. Pick your head up, get out of the weeds, and reorient your teams around actual demand, actual customer context, and actual progress that they're looking to make. Execution is everything. I'm not saying tactics aren't wonderful. They are. Tactics are, like, I love to work at the tactical level, but right now we have to zoom out before we can zoom in. Speed without clarity is total chaos, and clear priorities are the only thing that are actually going to drive real progress. You can get part of the way there by throwing spaghetti at the wall. You certainly can, but you are going to waste a whole lot of time. and you might burn out your team. We saw this happen in the big wave of SaaS in the early 2010s, right? A lot of people were burning out, particularly in customer facing roles for a different set of reasons than today. But staying anchored around these first principles will keep your team focused, anchored, motivated, and also with just like not needing to operate in like chickens with their heads cut off kind of scenarios, which happens so much and is happening a lot right now. Hopefully, this episode was helpful in reminding us, why are we here? What are we doing? And how do we make better decisions? And how do we enable our team to make better decisions and also be really excited? It's a really exciting time to be working in tech right now. And, there's two outcomes out of this. And one of them is your team is excited and clear and can help you make progress. And the other one is your team is throwing spaghetti at the wall and feeling stressed out and not knowing how to keep their jobs when there are still layoffs happening and people are getting really nervous about what is going on in the world, let alone in tech. So, first principles they're like my favorite thing. I haven't always called them first principles because I'm like, this is just the way things should be done. And I don't pretend for a second that you all don't know that these first principles exist and that they are important. I know you know they are, but maybe you can stick them on a sticky on the side of your monitor and just remind yourself on a daily basis that these things really matter and your team is depending on you to remember these things as well. And that goes for leaders who are managing their founders and CEOs as much as it is for the founders and CEOs that are managing their leaders and the members within those teams that are on the ground doing a lot of this work and getting just as many inputs as to what's possible today and the latest, prompt and product that is available. So hopefully this helps. And with that, I will see you in the next episode. Take care.
And that's it for this episode of the Forget the Funnel podcast. Thanks for tuning in. If you have any questions about the topic that we covered, don't hesitate to reach out on LinkedIn, or you can visit our website at forgetthefunnel.com. Also, if you found this episode helpful, don't forget to subscribe and help spread the word by leaving a rating or a review. Okay, see you next time.